Welcome back, everybody, and thank you so much for hanging in there. We did feel that it was really important to talk to the doctor. Well, I'm Ron Lutters, and we're here with Connie Steele and Senator Yagenti Rita, and she's been a friend of mine for quite some time. Matter of fact, I think it was about 2009 when we first met.
I think so.
You were just a kid. And so was I. At any rate, she's gone through the legislature as a state representative. Now she's a senator. And she has some really important things she wants to tell us. Now, we're going to do something a little different tonight. And I'm not sure how this is going to work. But we're going to give you a phone number so you can actually call in and ask questions of the senator and or any of us up here. So I want you to take this number down, 602 475-9844.
You have to release the doctor if you're going to take calls.
The doctor's gone.
Okay, all right.
So 602-475-9844 is the phone number. Now, before we do that, there's one other thing. I'm going to make a pitch here. As you know, the Arizona Project meets in this facility every Monday night. And when you come in, we always ask you to empty your pockets of your coins and dollars and hundreds and thousands of dollars dumping in the till. We never get that much money, but we need to get some money back into the till to pay the rent for this building. As everybody knows, that's a problem for everybody. So if you can write a check out, make it payable to the Arizona Project, and you can send that check to 3238 East Bell Road in Phoenix, Arizona, and that's 85032. That's 3238 East Bell Road, Phoenix 85032. Now, Michelle.
Yes.
You have been very, very active over the years in the political workings of the legislature for elections and processes and so forth. And you've been kind of a leader in that area for almost as long as I've known you. Tell us what has happened, what is going on, and what now, because of the virus, are we facing in the upcoming elections?
Yeah, so there's a couple things that are going on. One, there's the effort by the legislature last week, concluding today, to quickly get out a budget to make sure that government and the agencies can run in the event we can't come back into session. So we wanted to get that out early. It basically mirrors the budget that we passed last year. That way there's some consistency. We know the funding levels. Agencies can, of course, keep their doors open and run. We also have appropriated $55 million to DHS so that they can use those funds to help the costs that are going to be associated with combating this virus, and then another $50 million for a new fund called the Crisis Contingency and Safety Net Fund. That money will be used for economic assistance for small business, housing assistance, resources for the homeless. So there's that's been going on, and then there's also what's been happening regarding our elections. And because of this emergency and the unprecedented nature of it, and the advice to do social distancing and limit the amount of interaction that we have with our fellow man, and of course out and about in the community, there has been concerns that will affect how people vote. So there is an effort at this state level in Arizona, but really nationally, you guys, really nationally, to move to an all mail-in voting. We have mail-in voting, but that's something that you need to elect to do, which means you have to opt into it. It's not automatic, which means the government doesn't tell you we're going to send you a ballot. You have to ask to be sent a ballot. I find this very problematic right now because it's unnecessary. We want to make sure that we maintain all of the options available so that people can choose what's best for them regarding how they decide to vote. So you can vote early in person, you can vote in person day of, there's emergency voting, of course there's voting by mail. but I don't believe it's a good idea to have government dictate to you how you're going to vote. I want to keep that power with the individual voter. And what we should be focusing on is educating voters about their options so that they can prepare, so that they can decide how they're going to engage and in what way, and get ready. And we have time to do that. Our primary election is at the beginning of August, and of course the general is in November. Kind of a side note, it's a month earlier, our primary. We've never experienced that. Usually our primary has been at the end of August, now it's at the beginning. So that's an important reminder for people. But we still have time to get a good campaign out there, reminding people that you have lots of options, plan accordingly, decide how you want to vote so that you'll be able to exercise your right to vote when it comes time in August and of course in November.
The concept of voting by mail scares me to pieces because it is so easy to do this ballot harvesting concept that we know has caused a great deal of trouble in Arizona. I go one step further. I don't even think we ought to have early voting. I'm of the opinion that if you live in this country and you can't spend maybe 2 hours once every 2 years, and when I say that, everybody has its capabilities of having a couple of hours off work, that people don't realize that this is something that they should do, maybe go a little out of their way instead of having everything dropped in their lap, subject to, I think, some pretty scary and illegal activities on the part of well, I'll be very partisan, at least one political party, and that's the Democrats. We've seen it happen too many times, and I don't think this is a solution to anything. I think it's going to create more of a political problem for Republicans, because I think that the Democrats will utilize this again. Once more, I'll go through this very thing that we just discussed. Never let a good crisis go to waste. And here they are, and they're going to say, yep, here we go again. Let's do this mailing thing in, and we'll send people out to people's houses. We'll say, how would you like to vote? We'll pick it up and take it in.
And it is important to note that I sponsored the bill that banned ballot harvesting in 2016. That was passed at the legislative level, signed by the governor, and it has been challenged in court. But right now, it is the law of the land, so you cannot ballot harvest.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, you cannot ballot harvest unless you fall within 3 exceptions: caregiver, family member, household member. And that makes sense. Your spouse,
Absolutely.
again, a family member, a caregiver. Those exceptions make sense, that individual would be turning in your ballot, but they're very limited and specific. You cannot have some other third-party individual that doesn't fall within those exceptions carrying your ballot to turn it in on your behalf.
And yes, we do appreciate that, and you got that through, but it's been challenged, at least.
Well, it was upheld. It was upheld at the district court, and then it was upheld by the Ninth Circuit. Then it was overturned by the larger Ninth Circuit panel. Then the AG's office
Put a stay on it.
Yeah, sued and put a stay on it. So there's a stay, and so right now it is the current law, and there is, I think the AG is currently engaging the United States Supreme Court. It currently has a request in with the United States Supreme Court.
This is the scary thing. This is the scary thing here. Now, obviously, when our nation was founded, there was no such thing as, only certain people could vote, as you know, and ladies couldn't vote.
Yeah, that's terrible.
You didn't have that right for many, many years. But once we free that up, I just do not see the concept, and it bothers me, where we can let people that aren't citizens, not in Arizona, but in other elections in other states, where people that aren't citizens can vote. We're here in, now we do have a call, wow. Now we don't know what to do. Just push the button, Max?
Yep. Swipe it over to the right. Swipe it to the right.
Must have a question.
Hurry up here, Ed. That's the one I did. Hello, caller.
Hi,
Hi there. Who is this?
this is Stephen Richer.
Hey, Steve. How are you? This is
Good,
cool.
thanks.
For those of you that don't know
Hey,
who Stephen,
Steve.
Hi, I know you too.
well, for those of you that don't
is
know
this
who,
Ron?
this is Ron.
Hey,
Connie.
sorry,
With
I
Senator
muted
with
my,
Senator Yagenti Rita
my-
and
I was just watching on the computer.
excellent. No, we appreciate it. For those of you that don't know who this is, he's a very important man. He's running against Fontes, who is our current Maricopa County clerk. He's the one who has has created tons and tons of problems for us with the special emergency voting last time, counting ballots that should not have been counted because he intermingled stuff, and we're real pleased that he's running against Adrian Fontes as a Republican. Go ahead, Steve. Tell us what's on the
Yeah,
mind.
no, okay. Well, thank you very much, Ron, for having tonight's show. Obviously, an important topic. I feel that way, obviously, but others do as well. And thank you to Senator Yagenti Rita for her leadership on this particular topic. And I was calling to ask if she could walk us through some of the proposals and what specifically they look like and which ones have more traction than others.
Well, in terms of the policy that's been discussed or introduced at the legislature right now, nothing's being discussed because we have stopped all legislative work. And we have currently recessed until April 13th. Now, if we seem to climb out of this emergency and there is support to go back into session and some of the recommendations have been lifted and we do go back into session, Richard, what you're going to see in terms of elections is a renewed push to get a notice on the ballot to remind people about Prop 105 and let them know that anything that they pass, any initiative that they pass can't be changed without a 3/4 vote. And to further the purpose, I don't know how familiar the audience is, but we have something in Arizona called Proposition 105. So if a proposition passes on the ballot, a simple majority cannot change that. At the legislature, you get a 3/4 vote. That's a very, very high threshold. And the net result of that is we have propositions that get passed, and when something needs to be fixed, you can't fix it because it's very difficult to reach that threshold. And then, Richard, the other, and I think the other kind of piece of legislation that you'll see moving, and this came up last year, is there was an effort to allow for the curing of ballots that had missing signatures. Does that make sense? So when you mail in your ballot, you have to sign it, right?
Yes.
Okay, everybody says it on the envelope.
Right.
If you don't sign this, it's not counted. But the Secretary of State included in the election manual a provision to allow a cure period over and beyond the last day that they were supposed to be received, which is by 7 p.m. on election day. So she wanted to allow for days after the close of an election to cure these ballots. And that's very problematic because these are not properly executed ballots. They don't have a signature. And the current practice at the county level is to not count ballots that have not been signed after the election is over. Those two items, if we can get back into session, you'll see a renewed push for. There's a couple of other ones out there. I haven't seen them yet. They just got over to the Senate, and of course we have recessed. But the one that I'm bringing up today, and I'd like to get kind of your thoughts on it, is kind of this momentum and push to go to all mail-in ballots for our upcoming primary and general. Do you think that's something that's necessary? I've been clear, I don't at this point, but you're campaigning, you're out there. What do you think?
Yeah, no. So nobody has drafted a bill to the effect of what Secretary Hobbs is calling for yet?
That's correct. There is no bill right now that's addressing what Secretary Katie Hobbs is calling for, which is to move to the all mail-in for the primary in general.
Excuse me, I want to interrupt you.
Yeah.
She was in favor of this long before this crisis came up. I mean, I was very aware that when she was elected, that if she was elected, she would want to go to the all mail-in ballot. She's using this crisis, as we say the Democrats use constantly, and that is never let a good crisis go to waste. But she was in favor of this before she was elected.
And many people are. It seems like the Democrats favor it more. There are some Republicans that do, but it does not have overwhelming Republican support, I can tell you that, at the legislature. But this is an effort many have supported. It's just not necessary in Arizona because we already offer voting by mail. All you need to do is sign up, and you can vote by mail.
That's how we vote, because my husband's a pilot. He's out of town a lot, so we have to sometimes rely on that.
My whole thing with the early voting is I was an auditor. I used to travel all the time. I always had the ability to go down and vote early, absentee ballot.
And you could do
And
that.
but now they do it for everybody. I'm just totally against early voting altogether.
We have 27 days of early voting here in Arizona where you can vote. Not everybody realizes, but you can vote in person early at a voting center. Sometimes at City Hall. There's a variety of locations where you could go to vote early in person. And look, that's the way. That's one of the options here in Arizona. People do like it. They take advantage of it. We have so many options here. It's just not necessary to force people to go to an all mail-in election.
Agreed.
Senator,
Invitation for fraud.
Yes, sir.
are these proposals proposing to eliminate day of voting, or just supplement that with everybody gets an early ballot?
Yeah, I believe the proposals that have been talked about currently as it relates to managing, as they relate it to managing the coronavirus, is to move to an all mail-in ballot. So everybody who is a registered voter would be sent a ballot, whether you've requested it or not. But so if you were an in-person voter, that would no longer exist. You would be sent a ballot. Of course, everybody who's on PVL or has in the system, it would be the status quo for them. In terms of some of the more specifics, without a bill being drafted, it's hard to say. Would you still let people drop them off at places? I don't know.
Okay.
Those kind of specific considerations, I'm not sure. There's not been a bill that's been introduced. But
so it envisions a Oregon-Washington style.
Yes, it does. Right, exactly. So right now, I believe I'm correct. You can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe it's only 2 states that do a all mail, a statewide mandatory. They have gone to a complete all mail-in ballot, and that is Oregon and Washington. And that's what I believe is envisioned for Arizona. Now they'll say you could do it just temporarily. So the legislature could just temporarily give the county board of supervisors that authority. And that's an important point. The reason this can't be done now is because the authority to do so has not been given to the county recorders. And so the ask is, give that authority to not the county recorders, the board of supervisors. So the ask is, give that authority to the board of supervisors and let them decide. But there's a reason we've never done that. It's not that popular. Here's how I look at it. It's not for me to mandate to a voter how they should vote. It's for me, the government, to provide as much opportunity and convenience to vote so that we're encouraging voter turnout. It's for me to make sure as an elected official that there's confidence in the outcome, that there's integrity in the system, and then the voter's responsibility is to engage and is to decide how they want to engage and if they want to engage. You don't have to vote. I would, of course, encourage everybody to vote, but that's certainly each individual's responsibility to exercise.
And has anyone discussed perhaps just drafting a law that allows for some sort of emergency proviso where if such a scenario comes upon us again, the governor or the board of supervisors or the like can just say, given the emergency circumstances, we are in fact going to mail out ballots to everyone.
Well, I think what you'll get into if you go down that road is what constitutes an emergency. And we saw this exact conversation in 2018 when there was a movement by the county recorder's office in Maricopa County to kind of repurpose what emergency voting was. And what was something that was used very selectively and more on an individual basis became something that was kind of almost commercialized with these voting centers. And then there was no effort to identify if the individual using the emergency voting center was truly experiencing an emergency. So I think in your what if kind of scenario, where the conversation is going to go is, well, what's an emergency? Who defines it? How do we define it? It's slightly subjective. I mean, I'm sure there's some principles to an emergency that we could all agree on, but then it can get a little bit subjective, and it can get politicized as well. It's hard to define. And so I think we run a risk of creating more problems than we solve by allowing an option like that.
Right.
Steve, this is Ron again. Interestingly enough, Winston Churchill wrote a book, The History of the English-Speaking People. And in that, he was defining the United States. When we were in 1864, we were engaged in a civil war, as you know, and it was a terrible war. And he prides the United States by stopping the war to vote. Kind of an interesting concept. He said only Americans would stop a war to vote. But they didn't have mail-in ballots in those days. They actually stopped the war and voted. Now, I have problems with the whole concept of early voting, and I'll just give you a great idea as to why. We just watched the Democrat Party implode, explode, I don't care what you want to call it, but they ended up at one point where everybody in the party just kind of threw in the towel and to support Biden. Now, we had already had early ballots go out here. I watched the voting come in, and once again, I'm an accountant, so you're going to have to bear with me. I'm watching this, and I'm looking at the numbers, and I'm saying, if you take the numbers and you add them up, they were only about 73% of the vote, which meant that you had about 27% of the vote went to other candidates that were on, and I understand there were something like 20 candidates on the ballot, but those were people that were voting for people that were no longer even in the race. And so while the two gentlemen that were running, Biden and Bernie, but 27% of the people were pretty much disenfranchised because those candidates weren't even on the ballot. Well, they were on the ballot, but they weren't actually candidates. That happened in a number of states. If you go back and you check, well, you probably can't now, but if you were to watch the votes coming in on the TV, none of them were even close to 100% of the vote coming in. So we had that problem where people had made their decision based on things other than current events. Additionally, we were in Arizona. We were right beginning in this hideous disease that's going around, the COVID-19, and so we had another issue there in terms of people going out and voting early before they knew the positions. Now, I don't know if you heard the former vice president today, but he got on the air and he made a fool of himself, as he's wont to do, and he said he thought it was about time that President Trump started doing something about the COVID-19 virus. And I'm thinking, have you been at all, we discussed this a little earlier, have you watched what the president's doing? It's absolutely remarkable. I mean, this man has taken the lead on this stuff. I mean, that's what we elect, a leader, and he's leading, and yet we got this nonsense that goes out there before people put their mark on their ballot. and that's why I'm opposed to this. I think you should be as close to the election day as possible to see what in the world is going on and how different people are reacting. The vice president has no concept of what's going on. The president does. So, to have voted
Ex-vice
2 weeks
president.
ago,
Right, but we do have early
Ex-vice.
voting, so I mean, I think what we want to,
no, my point is we should not have early voting.
I know, but that's not going to change.
Well, thank you very much. I asked my questions, so now I'll log off and continue to listen on my computer. But thank you, Ron, and thank you, Senator. And
Hey, we're gonna have
Thank you. It's good to
you
see you.
on
Good to
here.
hear from you.
We're gonna have you on Fighting Back here real soon, Steve.
Okay. Well,
we-
thank you, Senator, for keeping us informed on this important topic.
Okay, thank
got
you,
it.
Steve.
Thank you.
Okay, so
That's a good point. That is. a
I
very
agree. I
valid
agree
point.
with you that that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Unless I become dictator, and then I got a fat chance of that. But I just don't like it. Maybe call me old-fashioned, and call me whatever you want, because I've been called about everything. But I really believe that there's a place in time. It's like a photograph. You take a photograph of somebody that's just a moment in time. When you elect the president or anybody, it's a moment in time, and it's not a moving picture. It's where we're at the day we vote. That's just me. So, at any rate, we have a line that's open here. It's 602-475-9844. One more time, 602-475-9844. And I'm going to make this pitch for money again, since we're not meeting in the classroom tonight. Anybody that has a little bit of cash left over, Arizona Project, 3238 East Bell Road, Phoenix, Arizona, 85032. Okay? Make it a big check, too. At any rate, Mr. O'Connor's laughing. I'm glad he woke up. At any rate, Michelle, tell us what's in store for the budget, the real budget.
Well, we did it. We passed it.
That's
it.
finalized.
That's finalized. It
Okay.
passed out of the Senate last Thursday. It was passed out of the House today, is going to the governor's desk. And so we have a budget. Now, could we add to that? Can we come back into session and do a supplemental? Yeah, that could potentially happen. The things are changing so rapidly,
Yes.
almost hourly, so it's really difficult to predict.
So I was just going to ask about that rainy day fund. How big is it? Because it looks like, the places around in this little plaza here next door, they're closed. They're closed down here.
Yes.
These are people that work, the nail place next door, the ladies that work in there, I don't think they work by the hour. They work by the customer. If a
Yeah.
customer doesn't come in, they don't get paid.
Yeah, and it's very sobering times for everybody. So you've got a number of legislators themselves who have small businesses. It's hurting them personally. Of course, then we're representing, thousands of people who have small businesses or employed and are really concerned and scared. And there's a lot of uncertainty, and that breeds fear. What we can do is kind of what we did do, which is we got a budget out there as fast as we could that was responsible, so that people had some predictability. And in the event, look, we can't make it back, that budget's going to take us through until the end of the fiscal year, which is end of June 2021.
Didn't we have a surplus of $1 billion?
Yeah, so we have we've got to carry for the remainder of this fiscal year. I think our carry forward is around a little over 600 million, and we do have a rainy day fund. So that first $55 million that I referenced, that was appropriated to DHS. That came from the rainy day fund. The rainy day fund was brought to $1 billion last year at the governor's request. That was something that was important to him, that he fought for, and that he got. And
Was
I mean,
wise.
yeah, I mean,
Right
could
now,
you?
that was a wise decision.
Yeah, I
Can
think
you
I would
imagine
have
the
that.
back-to-back timing of that? So, that's, I think what's important to note about the rainy day fund is that is one-time money. That is not just constantly getting an influx of tax dollars. Okay, that is one-time money. So when you spend out of that, just like if you spend out of your savings, I mean, and you're not putting anything in your savings in it, your balance gets lower and lower and lower and lower. So you need to make sure that you're using that as a bridge. That money is just kind of bridge money. It's not money that's sustainable that you can pay ongoing expenses with, because it's not an ongoing bucket of money like
Right.
like other.
Let me ask you
resources
this.
or other taxes.
Hopefully the scourge will soon leave us here, and we will get back to the prosperity that we have had. I'm concerned that if we blow through that, is there any contingency plan to take certain areas of the state budget and cut those back in favor of health services?
Well,
It's a great idea.
it just depends on what we're looking at. So, right now on top, so we just went over the rainy day fund, and we do have a carry forward balance that we can also, and then the combination of the roughly $600 million carry forward balance and the rainy day fund, hopefully that can provide the needed buffer so that we can kind of weather this storm. But in the event that it doesn't, and it's not a big enough bridge, so to speak, then you are going to have to look at cutting, and that's exactly what the legislature back in 2009 and 8 had to do when we had that great recession and the
We had
housing
to
market.
sell
Yeah.
capital.
And the housing market crashed. So nobody wants to do that, but what we are going to do is we're going to be fiscally responsible. We're going to be proactive. We are monitoring the numbers, daily, if not hourly, making sure that we're looking at the tax collections, looking at trends, trying to predict, what our revenue is going to be, that we don't overpromise and commit. It's much easier to spend than it is to cut. Nobody wants to do that. So those are the things we're going to do. We've got great leadership with the governor. Governor Ducey's done a phenomenal job. I'm sure this is the kind of measured approach he wants to take too with the budget, because we of course want to, there's triage, and there's assessing and dealing with the immediate situation, and then there's also long-term planning and making sure that when we do get out of this, that we're in a spot to get right back.
Jump in and make it
pick
go.
up right where we left off. So I'm
Is it-
also going to be working with the tourism community because as you know,
We wanna get them
Arizona,
back.
Scottsdale, we
Yes.
rely heavily on those tourism dollars.
Oh, yes.
Heavily
We do.
on those tourism. The restaurants, the outdoor activities, the sporting events, the concerts, the
Well,
the
just
art
the loss,
community.
just the loss of the or the baseball spring training was.
It's huge. Those are huge
Unbelievably
economic
costly.
drivers for Arizona and for my district specifically. We rely again a lot. They generate a ton of tax dollars directly and of course indirectly. And so I'm going to be, and this announcement will be coming soon, but I'm going to be working on an ad hoc committee to bring these leaders together because we got to make sure we have a plan. We don't want to be idle. We want to be working hard. We may not be at the Capitol, but that doesn't mean we're not teleconferencing. We're not, on the phones. We're not on our emails. Trying to make sure that that we've got a plan in place and we have options available depending on what's lies ahead that we can coalesce around, so that we can get people back to work. That's what they want. They want to get back to
Well,
work.
this particularly hit us at a really nasty time because
It's our in season.
as other parts of the country began to thaw out,
Yeah.
people before the Great Thaw, people would come
They're
to
here.
Arizona.
Yeah.
And as you know, the
We're in season.
airline
If you're
industry.
if you're in the hotel
We had an
industry,
B&B next door to my house, and they're making $1,000 a day. But those people
Not
are okay
anymore.
because no, they're still renting next door. They're swimming in the pool next door, but they can go to the grocery store and they can make their own food. Maybe that's what they're gonna do more of.
And
But
let's
they better be paying their taxes.
Let's repeat that one more time about people in the stores. Please, people, do not hoard food and water and toilet paper and so forth and so on. I mean, I don't know how much toilet paper you need, but I doubt you Well, depends if you're a Republican or Democrat, how much toilet paper you take.
Some of them are
Forget I said
reselling
that.
it, which
That
they
was
should
nasty.
be fined,
But-
and I hope they are.
But at any rate, we're still looking for a few callers. Howard, if you're out there, 602-475-9844. And the reason I'm picking on Howard, because he called us just as we were going on the air. We just have a short time left, and I'd like to have Mr. O'Connor take us out for a minute. We'll come back, and then we'll do our final little few minutes. And he's got something up his sleeve. I can tell he's sly as a fox over there, and he's going to come up with something very cute and
He's
clever.
got that creative look on his face. Yep.
Change the world.
All right.
He's doing Change the World.
One sentence at a time.
Take us out, man. Take us out. I'll be right back.
Okay. So we're changing the world one step at a time. So stick around. We're gonna take this last section, and we're just gonna be right back. See you on the other side.